Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, it's joke time, and I'm talking about humour and how when you're a musician, the humour is actually quite different. It's a little bit on the dark side, usually because musicians have a dark look at life, because especially if they are in that what I call bread and butter music, which is what I was in for quite a number of years, and that's where you simply repeat top 40 music, which you're hearing all the time and which you play all the time. In the US, there's not as much employment for musicians at the same level as in the UK. In the UK, you've got a company called Mecca, and Mecca runs a dance hall in almost every town. Every biggish town will have a Mecca dance hall, and in some cases there'll be, well, in London there must be 10 or 15 or 20 of these places, and they are a great place for young musicians to come up and learn their business. They can learn it working in the bands that are in all of these dance halls, and they do top 40 music, top 40 dance music, and that's what they do, pop music. So I came up in many ways through that, although in answer to one question which I got, which will answer one question about my start in music, no, I was not in the US, in a US band, in a US Army band. I was in the UK, and I started off in a line band, what they call a line band, and that's a regimental band. It's not the cream of the cream, and of course I wasn't worthy of the cream then anyway. So I started off, and I learned the trombone, and later I graduated up until I finished my time in the REME, the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers band, the staff band of the REME. So that's where I ended up my days in the army, and I served close on 9 years. I always say 8.5 years, close on 9 years, and that's where I received my training as a musician. And I came out, and from there I went into the first job that I had was in a comedy band on the coast called the Cracker Jacks, which we did comedy. We goofed around and made people laugh and played music, and we worked on the coast for a summer season. Then when I came home, well, when I came back to what I was going to call home, and that was London, I went in and I found a job in a circus band, and I worked in a circus band on trombone, and I did a long summer season, a long winter season by that time, at the Olympia Hall. It's the Olympia Stadium, I think it is. It's been knocked down now many years, but it was a huge place, and it had Bertrand Mills Circus, and I actually almost closely was tempted, if I could have done, if someone had really come and said to me, "You can come with us and we'll teach you," I would have probably become a clown, because I looked at them every night as I was playing, and they had such an incredible amount of fun. Back then they hadn't had this spooky aspect to clowns, where you had these Halloween type, I don't know, Friday the 13th clowns that were going in brutally murdering people, and clowns were fun and were loved by children, and they didn't spook people out. So I'd love to do that. But by the time I ended that season with Bertram Mills, I'd gone and done an audition, and I worked at the Pigalle restaurant. Pigalle restaurant at that time was in its waning years. It was on Regent Street. At one time it had been a famous place. people like Peggy Lee worked there, really big names. I think, I'm not sure, Sammy Davis may have worked there, Stubby Kaye. Some of the old movie stars had worked there, and I worked there for a short time before being offered a better pay with a small group in the Eve Club. I worked in the Eve Club and enjoyed the Eve Club because it was super difficult, super challenging, and was known as one of the hardest shows in town. To get someone to come in and really do a good job of standing in for you if you wanted a night off, that was not an easy thing. For someone to come in and sight read that show was difficult. And there were 2 shows, and they were very, very difficult. Jokes. They used to have this woman called Marquise. Marquise did the Dance of the Seven Veils, and I suppose at one time this lady must have been quite a ballet-based dancer. But anyway, under subdued lighting, she used to come on, and we would play music for her, which was suitably alluring and seductive, and she would float about the stage and entertain people like that as she cast off various bits of her veils. Well, she had one part where she was lifted, and they used to have this male dancer came on who was a stud in terrific shape, and once again probably ballet trained at some point in his career, and he came on and he would lift, he would do various artistic lifts with this lady. And anyway, one night she came in, my dry sense of humour got the best of me once again. The band were having their nighttime meal, which was laid on. We were in this tiny little band room, and Marquise came in and she spoke to Ivan, the band leader, and she said, "Ivan, I won't be able to do my spot tonight because I hurt my ankle in a lift with Tony." And I said to her, dry as a bone of course, I said to her, "Marquise, you shouldn't be lifting Tony, he's much too heavy for you." She said, "Oh, you stupid boy, it wasn't me that was lifting him. I was being..." Sorry about that, Marquise. Yes, what a doughboy I am. So that's one of the things where having a dry sense of humour doesn't do too well for you. But what am I going to say? Here, there are less than politically correct subjects. I don't believe that I do smutty types of jokes. I don't do those now. I mean, going right from those kind of jokes that you heard when you were a kid. The one I remember most from my childhood was the man's walking along, taking his dog for a walk, and he comes across this guy who's under one of the street lights, and he's looking on the ground. And the man says to him, "Excuse me, sir, have you know, what have you lost?" And the man says, "Stupid me," he said, "I've lost my car keys." And he said, so the man started helping him to look, and looking around on the ground, he said, "Exactly where did you lose them?" And he said, "Oh, I lost them over there on that corner." He said, "Well, why are you looking over here if you lost your keys over there?" He said, "Well, it's lighter here." Well, it was a schoolboy joke, okay. Now, what the other jokes, I used to live in Islington when I was in London, and in Islington it was full of Irish people. Now, with a name like Terence Flannery, you can guess that my heritage, maybe 1 or 2 generations away, is Irish, so I claim Irishness. Well, the one that I remember, I already told you the best one, which was about the twins and who was dead. But anyway, in Islington, Irish jokes were so common that people on the council were getting a little bit upset about it. So they actually issued a decree banning Irish jokes. You were not allowed to tell an Irish joke. Well, anyway, here's one that I remembered and will tell you now because I'm far away from Islington. And my apologies to any subscribers who are on the council in Islington. I didn't really mean it. It was only a joke. But two Irish labourers are in a ditch and they're digging the footings for something, and they're digging away. And then one of them says, "Murphy, how many law degrees have you got?" And Murphy says, 14. And his friend says, "Yeah, joking." He said, "You started it." Well, that's one. Now, we were on about musicians' jokes, and musicians' jokes are a little bit, they are a little bit on the dark side, which I admit to. So, hope that nobody will be offended at this, because it is politically incorrect, because it focuses on people of, well, what can I say, disabilities, okay? So, these people are getting married and they don't have much money. So they're looking around and they're talking to a friend and saying, "You know, I'd love to have a little do, but we can't afford it. I can't afford a band, you know." So their friend says, "Well, you know what? I know a band that go out very cheap." You know, he said, "I'm not saying that, you know, it's not the Rolling Stones, but they'll do a good job and they're cheap." So he says, "Well, can you book them for us?" And he said, "I will indeed." So he books this band. Well, it turns out that it's a duo. And when the groom goes over to talk to them, he realizes that the pianist is blind, and that's not so bad, but the drummer is deaf. And he's wondering how this can work, and he notices that they play back to back. See, so the drummer is at the back of the pianist, and he goes over and he says to the pianist, "Excuse me, sir, I was wondering about the song that we're going to start off with. Me and my wife are ballroom dancers. We'd like to start off with Fascinating Rhythm. Do you happen to know that?" And the blind man's there, and he said, "Fascinating Rhythm, yes, we can do that without a problem." So the groom is very happy, and he walks away and says, so can you start that, and I'll start the dancing with my wife." So the pianist reaches for the microphone, and he pulls the microphone in like this, and he says, "We've had a special request from the bride and groom for Fascinating Rhythm." And then he reaches behind him and searches for the head of the drummer, and he says into the microphone, "So here we go." Well, it's a musician's joke, okay? So what about the other jokes which you shouldn't really be telling? The one that I like was the baseball coach. There's a baseball coach, and he's been out on a seminar, an extra coaching training seminar for how to coach young kids on baseball. And he's pretty good at his job. But anyway, he's in the hotel. The seminar is over, and he's in the hotel, and he's just got one night, and he's heading out the next day. So he's in the bar come restaurant, and he's there, and he's sitting quietly having a drink, and then he looks over, and he sees an absolutely stunning looking woman, absolutely beautiful in every way, and he's almost embarrassed to look at her, but he is looking like this, and then he sees that she puts her finger up to her nose, like she reaches for a handkerchief, and her head goes back and she lets an enormous sneeze out, like this. Well, what's revealed is that she's got a glass eye, and the force of the sneeze, the eye gets propelled almost like a bullet, and it goes straight for the baseball coach, and without even thinking of it, he goes and catches it in his hand like that. And then he goes over and said, "I'm sorry, I'm not trying to embarrass you anymore, but actually, here's your eye. I think it belongs to you." And the woman says, would you sit down at the table, and I'll be back in a moment. And she heads off to the ladies' room, and then she comes back and she's cleaned up the eye and put it back, and everything is just perfect. And they have a few drinks, and she is a charming companion. And she says, "I wonder if you'd like to see me to my room. I'm not used to being in a hotel alone. Would you care to do that?" So he said, "Of course I would." Sees her to her room, puts her key in the lock, and opens the door for her, and he's about to say good night, and she said, I wonder if you would like to come in for a drink. I have some drinks in there, you know, if you wouldn't mind." So he said, "Wow, I'd be delighted." Anyway, she invites him in, and they go in and they have a little drink, and then eventually one thing leads to another, and he ends up spending the night. And she is a most wonderful, wonderful woman, and takes care of him in every way. And they spend the night together, they sleep together, and the next day she even gets up early and she orders a breakfast. And when she comes over and wakes him gently, and she has the breakfast, and she even feeds him while he's in bed. And he gets up and showers, and as he's leaving, he stops at the door and he said, "I have to ask you," he said, I'm no handsome man, I know that. I'm not even a great charmer with the women," he said, "but you've been so good. You brought me up here, you gave me a wonderful night. I just have to ask you why." And she said, "Oh, I don't know, you just caught my eye." Well, okay. Now, this is another joke while we're on about the eyes, okay? This is another one. I'm not going to burden you after this. So this is the next joke about an eye. There's this spinster lady, politically incorrect, straight away I'm in it. So she's single and getting on in years, and she probably puts it down to the fact that she has a glass eye, which she is always most self-conscious about. And she is out on the road one day, and the eye, through the open window, her glass eye gets a little bit of grit in it, and she has to stop to clean it. So she stops at this bit of a rundown gas station. It goes into the ladies, and it's not the best possible thing, and it's not very clean. Well, she takes her eye out, and she cleans it and she washes it, and then she looks around, and there's nowhere on the sink to put the eye, because she's just washed and cleaned it. What's she going to do? She's going to clean herself up and then put the eye back. Well, anyway, she's looking around and there's nowhere to put it, so she pops it in her mouth, and she's washing her hands and getting all cleaned up, and what she's forgotten to do is to lock the door. And somebody else tries to come in. It's a very tiny washroom, and the door opens and it hits her up the butt, you know. So she's so surprised and shocked, and she swallows the eye. Well, she doesn't think anything of that. She gets home safely and without any further embarrassment, and she puts the spare in. Now, she thinks that in a day or so it will just come out naturally and she won't have to worry about it. But after 2 going on 3 days, it still hasn't appeared. So she's getting a bit obstructed, say. So she goes to the doctor. Now, she's very, very shy among men, and so she goes to her usual female doctor, and she's shown into the surgery, into the doctor's office, and to her dismay, she finds that it's a man, it's a young man, and she sits down. She doesn't know quite how to explain this, but he's a very sharp doctor, and he realizes that there's something wrong. He says, "Look, miss, I know that I have it down here in your chart that you really like to see the lady doctor, but I want to assure you that everything is very professional. There's nothing to worry about, and I'm very discreet and careful." So he manages to talk her down, and he gets her to lie on the couch, and she explains to him that she thinks that she has a blockage, but she cannot for the life of her tell him what she thinks that blockage is. And so she's still very, very reserved, and he has to really coach her down in it. Well, she lies face down, and he pulls back her underwear, and he looks and he says, "Now, please stop worrying. It's okay. I'll be very, very careful." And he looks up there, and the eye has come right down to the point of exit of the anus, and as he looks up, it appears that the eye is looking back at him, and he says, "Miss Forbush, you'll have to learn to trust me." Now, I think that that's a funny joke. It's not my creation, of course, but that's a funny joke. Anyway, that's my last offering. I hope that you have at least had a little giggle, and we'll be back with some more as my aging memory gives it to me. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Thanks for looking in. Do have a fun night.